Hey, my name is Shelly and this is my channel Shell's Biz. Okay, before we get started, I just want to say I think I'm fighting a cold, so that's why my voice is all funny. That's why I kind of look like I've got the bags under my eyes. So I gotta film this video before I get too sick to do anything, so let's get started. So today's video is gonna be a bit ambitious. This is gonna be my 2024 TBR. In this video, I'm only really gonna be addressing new series that I want to start in 24. And I thought that it would be kind of funny to make up a list of 24 series to start in 2024. Whether or not I start them all, it's, up in the air, but I thought it'd be fun. Originally, when I made the list, I thought that it was going to be really difficult to come up with 24 series that I wanted to start, and it literally took me 5 minutes. So I'm going to start from like 24, which means that is less likely that I'm going to start the series, and then work my way up to one. And the top 10 are the ones that I'm going to be like for sure reading in 2024. So if you want to skip to my top 10, you can just find the prompts down below. Just a bit of a disclaimer, I usually don't give much of a synopsis of books that I haven't read yet, mainly because I don't like to spoil books for myself. And sometimes reading synopsis or hearing other people's reviews really do spoil books. So I like to keep it as vague as possible. Without further ado, let's get started. Number 24 is The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. This is the 5 Warrior Angels series, and I think this is a trilogy. And it is huge. Like, this first book is huge, and I think they just get bigger and bigger as they go on. I have the first 2 in paperback. I've had this book on my shelves for a couple years now, and the main reason why I haven't picked it up is because I heard it's grimdark, and I'm not really a grimdark person. I like Joe Abercrombie because it has like more of a humor to it, where if it's all like, sad and hopeless, it's not for me. That's not for me. And really don't like it when series kind of go over the top with the graphics unnecessarily. I don't know where this book lies, but yes, it is an epic grimdark series. It is high fantasy, and that is all I know about it. I've heard that the few people that read it love it. So this is on my list, and it's been on my list for quite some time, and I feel really bad, but yeah, I just haven't been drawn to it because of the grimdark label to it. Number 23 is The Warrior Bards by Juliet Marillier. I recently just read her Darkthorn and Grimm trilogy, and I loved Dreamerpool, but the other 2 just really didn't work for me. And it's not that they were bad written or a book per se, it just personally didn't work for me. I'm sure that it would work magically for other people, but just not for me. But this one is about warrior bards. It's in the same world as Blackthorn and Grimm, so it's an Irish setting, and the audiobook is narrated by Moira Cork, who's like one of my favorite audiobook narrators. I know like zip all about it, but as a trilogy, I own all 3. They're quite small, so I could really fit them in between the big, huge ones that I plan to read. 22 is Shadow of the Apt by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Adrian Tchaikovsky is one of my favorite authors because his writing is constantly evolving, constantly changing. He's very experimental with his writing, so one book series is completely different from another book series. And that's what I like. Like, you don't have the same tone, the same kind of characters. It's very different. Plus, he is incredibly smart. Like, sometimes a little too smart that I'm like, the story and the plot are just right over my head. I've read 3 of his series and 1 of his standalone. I've read the Children of Time trilogy. I can't remember the name of the 3rd one with the shape-shifting. I'll put it down below. And Guns of the Dawn. And right now I'm in the middle of the Final Architect trilogy, and I'm loving it. So I have really high hopes for this. And this is his first series, and it evolves around basically these beings that are like insect beings. So there's like wasps and beetles and dragonflies, like humanoid beings with insect characteristics, which is so freaking fascinating to me. Like, I am so fascinated by that. But the only reason that I haven't picked it up is 1, it's a 10-book series, and 2, it is military. And I'm not really one for military fantasy, but I really want to give it a try because I do love Adrian Tchaikovsky, and also the insect people. Like, that is so cool. So this is number 22. 21 is The Kingdom of Liars by Nick Martell. This is called, oh God, what is this actual series called? The series is called The Legacy of the Mercenary King, and it is a completed trilogy just recently. So I don't really know much about it besides like one, it's like I think it was a revenge story. And two, the magic is based on like the fact that if you use a magic spell or whatever, it will take your memory. So the more magic you use, the more memory you lose, which I think is really interesting and cool. From the people that I know that have read it, I really liked it. And now that I'm looking at it, maybe this should be a little higher up on my list because it is a trilogy and I do think I really would like the series. Plus the covers are just spectacular. I just love them. And I just realized as I'm looking at this book, the blurb here is from Brandon Sanderson. So more of the reason to read it. The 20th book that I want to read, I actually don't own a physical copy of yet. And that is Revolution Space by Alistair Reynolds. The first book is the same name as the series. Again, I don't know much about this one, besides the fact that it was highly recommended for people who love space operas, and I love me a good space opera. I don't know if this is a military space opera. I don't know if there's aliens in this. I don't know if it's like more like kind of like Star Trek like space opera or like Star Wars space opera. I don't know, but it's gotten really great reviews and comes highly recommended to people who love sci-fi and space operas. 19 is I think it's called the Burning series by Evan Winters. This is the first one, The Rage of Dragons. This book is polarizing. Either the people that love it. Either the people that don't like it really don't like it. So I'm quite curious to see which one I will fall upon. It seems like something that I would really love to read. But I've heard that the characters weren't very developed. The like interaction between them wasn't the best, but that is from the first book, so maybe it gets better on with the series as it goes on. Currently there's 2 books published, and I think the 3rd book is coming out in 2024. I will write down below if that's correct or not. 18 is the Winter Sea series by H.M. Long. This is Darkwater Daughter. I actually was supposed to read this in the summertime, but I decided to hold back on it because I found out that the sequel is going to be released in 2024. So in order to avoid having to reread a book or completely forget it, I tend to wait until the 2nd book is out and then I read the first, and if I like it, then I'll continue on. And with like 2 books like under my belt, I tend to remember a bit more than just 1 book. So I'm probably going to wait probably closer to the release date of the 2nd book before I pick it up. But this is a nautical book, and I believe it is enemies to lovers, and I think there is like a girl who can control the weather or storms or something. Regardless, totally sounds like my jam. Yeah, so I'm excited probably to pick this up probably next spring or early summer. 17 is Green Rider by Kristen Britton. I don't own a copy of this yet. I plan to change that. This is like another ongoing series that's been like almost like a classic series that's been going on for a long time. I believe it's concluding soon. So this is like the best time to start a new series when it's concluding. From what I know, it is about a woman that somehow finds herself becoming like a Green Ranger.
It's morphing time!
But the cover's cool, and from what I know, Kristen Britton actually is a park ranger in a provincial park in the States. So that's kind of cool. Plus, I believe this is a really long series. I think there are like 10 books out. Oh, I wrote it down. Currently, there are 7 books out, and I believe the 8th and final book is coming out in 2024. So I think it's like the perfect time to start the series. 16 is Fallen Gods by Hannah Kenner. I've had this book for a while, and the first book is God Killer, and this is like recommended by Elliot Brooks from Elliot Brooks' channel. Again, like Darkwater Daughter, I'm going to be waiting until the sequel comes out before I continue on. Honestly, these covers are just stunning. They're like one of those covers that like the more you look at it, the more you see. And then the sequel's cover is just beautiful. So I like this because it's fairly short and it's all about gods, and I love gods. So yeah, I think It's like about these people that go around killing gods. And then one of the people in the story is actually connected to the god. And so she doesn't want it to get killed, obviously, because she has a connection with it, but they want to be separated. And that's all I know. So, all that considered, it sounds like something really great. 15 is Shadow and Crown series by S.M. Gathier, and it starts with the Song of the Marked. This is a romantasy, and I believe it's more like on the epic fantasy side than the romantasy side. And it is written in third person, which I am stoked about, because I don't know if you notice this, most romantasies are written in first person, and I freaking hate it. But that's just my personal preference. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that's what I like. So I'm more drawn to this because it is third person, and it is more on the epic scope than focusing on romance. That's all I know about it. I know literally nothing about this story. I know that this was originally a self-pub book, and it was picked up by Penguin. I love it when a good self-published book gets picked up and brought to the broader market of traditional publishing. This will be kept in my TBR for when I'm feeling romantasy. A newer addition to my list, and that is The Nameless Republic by, oh my god, I'm gonna totally butcher this name, so I'm so sorry. Suyi Davis Okunbawa. And this one, when I first saw this cover when it came out, obviously, how could you not be interested in this gorgeous cover? But for whatever reason, I just never picked it up. Now the second book has been published or is getting published this month. I figured it's like the perfect time to not pick it up, because now I can pick it up, the first one, and then read the second one. But yeah, these covers are just spectacular. I'm going to keep saying this, but I don't know much about this, besides the fact that it's African inspired, and I believe that there's like a forbidden magic. People that have opinions that I trust love this series, so I'm really hoping that I also love this series. Number 13 on my list is The Hierarchy. The first one is The Will of the Many by James Islington. Honestly, this book has gotten so much traction. I don't really know much about the story besides the fact that it is at a school. It's like a school setting, and it is like, I think, during Roman Empire times or like inspired times. But the only reason I haven't picked this up is because, one, I heard that there is a big cliffhanger at the end, and I'm not okay with cliffhangers. I mean, I guess I have to be sometimes, but like they drive me nuts sometimes. But the cliffhanger is apparently like big, so I'm literally waiting until when the sequel is announced before I plan on to read this. I am in the middle of the Licanius trilogy by James Islington, and I'm kind of lukewarm on it. It's a very classic epic fantasy feel, but I don't know, I'm just finding it difficult to connect with, so hopefully I can find a better connection with this new series. Upon editing, I decided to switch out my number 12 for the Greatcoat series by Sebastian de Castell, with the first one being The Traitor's Blade. I've owned The Traitor's Blade for quite some time, so I feel like I really need to pick it up. The reason why I want to pick it up is because I heard it's quite humorous, and I heard that there's also a really great found family element to it. So I feel like when I'm in the mood for something less serious, a little bit more humorous, something that doesn't take life so seriously, I'm going to lean towards the Greatcoat series. Number 11 is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I have the old copy, and I'm probably going to be getting the 10th anniversary copy because I've heard it's been changed or re-edited, because she originally wrote this when she was 19, and it's going to be a bigger book series right now. I think there's 7 books or 5. There's 5 books, and I think it's going to be a 7-book series. And she's decided to go back and kind of change a little bit of it to make sure that it flows properly, which I'm okay with. Like, if you want to make your book better, by all means. So I'm definitely going to be getting the 10th anniversary and reading from that. I don't really know much about it besides the fact I think it's urban settings. I read an interview with Samantha Shannon where she was talking about how she suffers from really bad migraines, especially having the auras, and she wanted to include that in one of her stories. So I actually suffer from really bad migraines with the auras, so I thought that was really interesting. But you don't really hear much about this series anymore, mainly because I think she stopped writing it to write The Pride of the Orange Tree and The Day of the Falling Night. which are huge chunkers. I think she's back now at it. And so it's kind of like the perfect time to pick it up. Number 10 is Dragon Riders of Parn by Anne McCaffrey. I have been wanting to read this series forever. It's about dragon riders, and I love dragons, and I love dragon riders. Plus, I heard this is a little bit more sci fantasy, which is like my favorite subgenre. So I really been wanting to read this. I don't know why. I don't know why I haven't picked it up. Probably because it's like an older series, and sometimes I don't really click with older series, especially if they're written before the 1980s. Honestly, I really have been wanting to get into this. I love Dragon Riders, like I said before. So yeah, I want to read the first, I think, 4 in the series, because I think it's a bigger, like I think there's like a world of Parn where there's like a lot of them. But I want to read the first 4 series, like the first contained series. Definitely. So that's my number 10. Number 8 is the Tide Child Trilogy by R.J. Barker. I actually started this, I think I read the first chapter in the summertime, and I just couldn't connect with the writing style at all. So I think it's one of those books that I have to listen to the audiobook. I've heard people really love this series. I think I've only heard like 1 or 2 people say they didn't like it, but the people who read past book 1 just adore the series. And it's literally about, I think it's about pirates or something that like build ships out of dead dragons. Like, freaking how cool is that? And the map basically shows that there is barely any land, so it's all sea. Honestly, that sounds fantastic to me. I love seafaring, nautical stories like so much. Almost as much as I love sci fantasy, I love nautical books. So this is high on my priority list. Number 8 is Empire of the Vampire by Richard Swan, the first being The Justice of Kings. I don't own that book yet, but I will be getting it soon. I actually started this book. I got like to chapter 4, and I decided to put it down because I just wasn't feeling it at the moment. But it is basically about an assistant to like this Grand Inquisitor, or I can't remember what he's called, but basically he goes around solving crimes, and it's like her perspective, and she's telling the story, first person narrative. She's telling her story of what's happening. That kind of narrative I generally try to avoid, but the love that the series is getting is just mind-blowing. It's a 4 to 5 stars for everybody. So I really need to finish this book and see why everybody loves it so much. From the little bit I read, it is very well written. The characters are very fleshed out. I really liked it. So I will probably continue on early in 2024. Number 7 is Rise and Fall by Michael J. Sullivan. This first one starting with Nolan. I've had this book for a couple years now, and the only reason I haven't read it is because I'm waiting for the entire trilogy to come out, because I love binge reading Michael J. Sullivan. I don't know why. I love binge reading his series. So I know that each book is kind of like a standalone that kind of connects to each story, but I still just love binge reading. So I have the first 2 books, and the third book is coming out, I think, in 2024. I pre-ordered it, so it should come soon. This is after the Legends of the First Empire, but before Riot of Revolutions, and the main character here is actually in Legends of the First Empire, so I'm really curious to see where this is going. I literally have no idea what this is about, but it's in that world, and I freaking love it. And yeah, if you haven't read anything by Michael J. Sullivan, do it. Read it, because it is great. He is funny. He's got his worlds are a little bit simplistic, but it's just the characters and the world and like what happens in the story is just so good. So good. So yes, I'm really excited to start the series. Number 6 is Drowning Empire by Andrea Stewart, the first one being The Bone Shard Darter. I've had this on my shelf since it came out. And again, I don't know why, I just kept buying them. And I have all 3, and I just kept buying them and never reading them. This first book was so highly rated that I was just on everybody's top 10 of that year. Unfortunately, the second book kind of declined, and the third book, I think, was like a mix. People were kind of like lukewarm on it. So because of that, it's kind of like dampened my desire to read it, but I do own them, and these covers are amazing. And honestly, from the synopsis, I really do want to read it. So I believe what I know from it is multiple POVs. One of them is the daughter of the empire or the emperor, and the magic is based on like bones, like bone magic. I think either they ingest it or they use it. I don't know. And I think it's LGBTQ as well, and I believe that there is a companion animal as well. So all of that sounds really, really great. And I really just need to read this series because I think I will actually love the first book and hopefully love the rest of the series. Number 5 is Night Angel by Brent Weeks. And this is the omnibus of the first 3, I believe. I think there's 4 or more now. I don't know. I keep saying this. I don't know anything about this. I really don't. I really don't know. I mean, I guess there's angels. I don't know, but I feel like this is one of these books that I just need to read because, again, it's one of those books that people who read it either love. This book is really heavy. Who read it, love it, or, hate it. So I don't know which one I will follow up on, but for some reason I get the feeling that it's like, if people who love Buffy will like this. I don't know why. Maybe someone said something. So I got this copy from a secondhand store, and I'm probably going to get the new covers. If I like it, if I like the first book, I'll probably get the new covers because honestly, this thing is really heavy. Although it's a nice floppy paperback, it's really freaking heavy and I feel like I'm going to break my wrist reading it. The first book is The Way of the Shadows. And I think they're pretty short books. Like, I mean, the fact that they fit in this big book says that they're not that big. So yeah, high on my priority list. Number 4 is the Empire Trilogy by Jenny Wards and Raimi Needfeis. This book feels so light compared to the last one. This has been on my radar for such a long time. Like years, like almost like a decade. I would probably say about a decade. And this is a sci fantasy. It's highly political, and that's all I know. That's all I know. Besides the fact that Jenny Wards actually did the cover for these books. I had no idea that she did all these covers, which is phenomenal. Jenny Wards is basically getting a lot of traction lately because of her other series, which is concluding. So a lot of people are picking that up and loving it. But I feel like her writing is very advanced. And sometimes that's a hit or miss with me. Sometimes that works so well, depending on the tone, or sometimes it just doesn't work. So I'm really curious to see where this goes. But this first book is just so highly rated. I'm actually quite tempted to pick it up in December, but I have literally so many series that I'm in the middle of. In December, I will be making a video talking about all the series that I'm in the middle of the progress with, and after seeing that video, you'll kind of understand why I decide to not pick this up in December and wait till I finish a couple series before picking it up. But yeah, I'm really excited about this, and I think I'm definitely going to love it. Honestly, it feels like if you like Dune and stuff like that kind of classic sci fantasy, I think this is very similar in style and theme. So yeah. Number 2, I don't own copies yet, but I backed the Kickstarter, and that is Rob J. Hayes' new trilogy called, I think it's called the God Eater Saga. And the first one is Herald. I don't know anything about the series, like nothing. Well, I mean, besides the fact that it's like obviously about gods, but Rob J. Hayes has quickly become one of my favorite authors, especially after reading the War Eternal series and the Mortal Techniques series. I just love his writing, his narrative, everything. So yeah, I backed the Kickstarter, and I believe that the whole trilogy is going to be released in March. So I'm so excited to get to that. Number 2 is a big doozy, and that is Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, the first being The Dragonbone Chair by Tad Williams. I've had this on my list forever. Honestly, I think I'm just not reading it because I'm not a big epic fantasy kind of person. I'm realizing this now. But I actually read or listened to the first 3 chapters, and I liked it. And a lot of people complain about the first being really slow, and then it picks up like halfway through the book. But I actually really quite enjoyed it. But at the time, I was not feeling epic fantasy, so I put it down. But I really want to prioritize this because it just looks so good. And like the fact that it's influenced so many current best-selling fantasy writers, it says something. But honestly, it's the art that makes me want to pick it up. Like, just, I'm showing a picture, but just look at their armor. It's iridescent. Like, that's so cool. Anyways, I've been wanting to pick this up forever, and 2024 will be the time. The number one is the Vagrant God trilogy by David Douglas. The reason why this is number one is I was literally going to pick it up, but I decided to put it down because I made a list of all the series that I'm in the middle of, and it was way too overwhelming. So I'm like, you know what, this will be a 2024 task. But yes, the reason why I saw the cover a couple years ago when it came out, and I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. But then the third cover came out, and I was like, oh my God, what is this series about? And from what I know, it's a revenge series, and I think there is LGBTQ representation, and I believe that there is like shadow magic and gods. So I mean, like, all of that sounds really fantastic to me. And it's a trilogy, and I'm really like leaning towards trilogy. I think 2024 is going to be the trilogy year. I mean, you can't go wrong with a trilogy, right? You get 3 books, it gets wrapped up in a pretty little package, and you don't have to spend half a year or a year reading through a whole series. So that is my number one for 2024. If you have managed to stick with me through the end, you are a rock star, and thank you so much. And if you feel like it, leave a book stack emoji. That's like my go-to emoji because I always have a big old book stack beside me. I'm also active on Instagram and Goodreads, mostly more on Goodreads. If you want to follow what I'm currently reading and my current thoughts, I'm more active there. Please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching, and have a fantastic day. Bye!